Right, shall we kick off, folks?
Like work.
Unbelievably, Lee decided he'd rather be in the West Indies than Bilsley Common this evening, so you're stuck with me.
Very selfish of him.
Very selfish of him. I can't believe it. Thanks first for Adam and for agreeing to hold another Q&A session with us, and for everybody who's turned up. As before, we've had some questions posted in, which we'll sort of pitch in through. We hope people have lined up a lot of tough, hard, difficult questions for Adam to tax him here. Steve, our lovely assistant for the night, has got a mic that he'll walk around with, and we'll try and capture people's questions.
Do we need to put the camera on Steve? Steve?
No.
Okay. No.
Don't put people off.
So if you can just let us know if you've got a question, Steve will come talk into the microphone, and then we'll capture it all on video to play back tonight. So,
yeah, just thank you very much for agreeing to have me again, guys. I found the last one really thought-provoking, and I hope you found it useful. Feel free to ask any questions, and let's see how the night goes.
Okay, who's first?
That's easy. Let's go home.
One to tax Steve right over in the distance. I'm not sure the cable will go that far.
You're going to have to come to me, I think.
This is a bit impromptu, this, but how important do you see your grassroots sort of mini and juniors in bringing the players through? It's free resource for you, really, because parents are paying for their players to play for the mini and juniors, but you don't see many of the players coming through Moseley Oaken into the first team. So how do you see that playing sort of long term?
It's a very very good question. I think the mini and juniors, they're the future of the club. If you look at the pathway at the moment, it's been broken for some time, and that's going to be addressed. But if you took, say, the under-15s and the under-16s and the Colts, for example, you're probably looking at like 4 or 5 years before you start to see the fruits of that coming through. So it has been identified, and the way the club will shape up over the next year or two. Bearing in mind we have worked through COVID, which we can't forget, and I think this year was a priority just to see everybody getting back playing. But in order for this club to become the premier club in Birmingham and be sustainable, we need to have that conveyor belt of players coming through, so both boys and girls, and we've got a strong ladies team as well. So we need to. It will take time, and I think that's the big thing. We've got to make sure we're patient, but the closer the club becomes together, the brighter the future. Derek.
I'm going to jump in on that because I don't need that. Just following on from what we're saying there, Adam, the Worcester and Wasps run DPPs, which are Development Player Pathway, I think. I don't even really know what it is. But they're taking some of our really talented players from under-14s, under-15s, under-16s, and they've been working with them once a week. It's not, I don't believe, anything we couldn't do in terms of training-wise. It's just the fact they're a name. And what worries me is that these lads are having a load of smoke blown up their backsides by Worcester and Wasps, excuse the paraphrasing there, and they will get to a point where they will be told they're not going to make it. And these lads will end up leaving the game because Worcester and Wasps have told them they're not going to make it. And that concerns me greatly. And what I would like us to do as a club is to run our own development programme once a month maybe with our 14, probably our best 14s, 15s, 16s, and putting our arm around them and actually saying, we think you've got something. You might not be good enough for Premiership rugby, but you're certainly good enough for us, and making them feel that they're really wanted by the club. And in that sense, hopefully, they won't walk away from the game, because that's what's happening in rugby at the moment. Young men are walking away from the game when the Premiership guys tell them they've no future. And I'd like us to use our best coaches, you, the Oak guys, whoever, just to do some development coaching with them.
I understand exactly where you're coming from. I mean, the DPP program is, it's been around for a few years, and as a young player, it's almost like an extension of your of your, your Saturday or your Sunday league team. So, you play for your local club, you then get invited to the DPP. I totally agree with you, Derek. The fallout and the dropout of players is very high. I do think that maybe the way the players get handled could be looked at from I wouldn't say a safeguarding point of view, but more to do with the fact that, just because you haven't made it this year doesn't mean you're not going to make it next year, mainly because we all know that children develop at different rates. Yeah. You can have a growth spurt over the summer and you go from like 5'8" to 6'2", and that's how kids go. So I think it's about measuring expectation. I do understand where you're coming from regarding potentially running a DPP program here. In my opinion, I think that could be run through the camps. Again, it's a conversation we can have as a wider conversation. I think at junior level, let's remember we should be inclusive for everybody. The exclusivity bit probably comes through the Premiership clubs, and the management side is what needs to be addressed. And I think the way that everybody feels more part of this club is by buying into it. And I think with there's things in place where we're all going to be looking to try and invest back into the club, even the first team. And I think long term that will give a vested interest into everybody, parents included. And I think the closer we become as a club and the children become more familiar with the first team players and the first team ladies and Moseley Oak and vice versa, we've already started to see it happen. The Colts are training with Moseley Oak. There are a number of Moseley Oak players that train with the first team. We're starting to see it happen towards the top of the pyramid. But I agree with you, Derek. How can we then look to improve that a little bit lower down?
Just adding on to that, I mean, if, for example, you took a group of hookers and our first team hooker was teaching them how to throw in the ball properly, or halfbacks working with halfback or back three and things like that. So we're doing specialist type of work, and really, because we've got great talent of coaches and players within the club ourselves, and I just think we ought to upskill our young men.
I agree. I think not only just the players, but I think the coaches. I think we should try and raise the standards right across the board. So if there was a hookers clinic, let's use some of the coaches, some of the first team coaches to run CPD. So we raise the standards right across the board. And like I said, the more we can become adjoined. So if the under-16s are using the same calls, it might be slightly dumbed down, but same sort of calls as the first team, then that shows progression, it shows unity and working together. But I agree with you. Something that we can look at certainly moving forward.
We are hopefully safe now. So I suppose the question is, does that give you freedom for the rest of the season about what you do, about the style of play, or the people that you bring in to develop for next year? Or do you think we're at that position yet?
Personally, I don't think we're safe until the last game's been played. I think we've got to treat every game as if it's a must-win. Look at Saturday, for example. We didn't pitch up. The week's preparation wasn't great, but we didn't pitch up at all, and we need to make sure we respond this week down at Rams, and we need to make sure we respond then at home against Sale. We can't take our foot off the gas. We want to try and finish 7th or 8th if we can. That will show progression from year one, the season that we never finished due to COVID. And we've got a good bunch of lads, and I say it every week, and I'm pretty sure people get fed up with me saying it about we've got a great group on a journey, but we are on a journey. This is a very new side. When we played Plymouth at home, we had 20%, so there's 4 players out of the 20 that were there from year one. So that's 16 new players. So that shows the magnitude of the turnover of players we had. We even had a high turnover of players in year 2. We didn't play any games. Go figure. So in terms of retention, we want to try and keep as many of these players together as we can. There's a lot of fantastic young players that we want to try and develop and allow them to flourish over the next couple of years, because they're the future of the club. But in terms of recruitment, there's obviously players that I'm looking to try and bring in, but ultimately first let's deal with the season, and we'll go from there. But I think if you look at National 1 as an actual league, the top 6 have kind of indicated, by having consistency and continuity of squad like they have done. They've had the same players for the last 5 or 6 years. That gets results. There's games that we should have won this year that we lost due to naivety, due to not being able to probably manage the game properly, which showed a bit of a lack of experience as a team. So that in itself is, it kind of indicates where we're at in terms of our infancy as a group. But this time next year, I'd like to think we're having a different conversation if we can keep the players that we've got, have some younger players coming through, but also bring a bit more experience into the group. I'm pretty sure next year we'll have a good year.
Evening, Adam.
Evening.
I've actually got a two-part question. This is from Lee Humphreys. He wants his name mentioned.
Right, okay. Okay. Am I going to get abused? Is that what we said his name?
He wants to know about your thoughts on the number 7 position within our squad.
Okay.
When do you want to play a number 7, and when do you not want to play one? Does he particularly think that we need one? The second part of the question is, he believes that Pat Zindi has had some great performance at number 7. Do you think he's a natural number 7, and will he be with us hopefully next year to play at number 7?
Thank you. So, 7, like any other position in the back row, it's not horses for courses, but it all depends on the type of game you're trying to play, and the opposition that you're playing against, and also the weather conditions. So if you're going to be playing against a big pack, heavy pitch, you may decide to go with size. If it's a dry track, which is really quick, you may decide to go with a really dynamic 7 to beat people to the breakdown, get over the ball, create havoc in those first couple of phases. Pat Zindi, like Liam Monroe, Will Safe at the start of the year, all these guys are good 7s in their own right. They're all very different. They've all got a very different skill set. They bring a different strength to the actual team itself. And I think, as we've probably seen, the way rugby's now developed over the years, bar set piece, once set piece is finished, players, regardless of the number on the back, they're rugby players, aren't they? So they've all got to be able to pass the ball, they've all got to be able to jackal at the breakdown, they've all got to be able to understand and read the game. So, in order to to answer the second part of the question, yes, hopefully Pat will be with us next year, but just like the majority of the current squad will hopefully be with us next year.
Cheers, Adam.
Thank you.
Shall we take a couple of the questions that were emailed in while people think of something else? Sure. So, this one's fairly lengthy. Over the last 2 seasons, we've seen that Moseley can play. And I know that we've had more than our fair share of injuries, but both times we've come fast out of the traps in September, but fallen away by Christmas. What can be done to be more consistent next season?
I think it's actually very interesting. So, you do pre-season in dry conditions. The pitch is hard. It's a fast track. So I think what we see in the first 6-7 weeks of the season is probably what we've put into place during pre-season itself, in order to adapt probably quicker to the actual conditions that we then are faced with, whether it's heavier ground, windy conditions, wet conditions. That's something that we need to obviously be more aware of as a group. But then obviously selection and the player availability then kind of underpins that. We've been very unfortunate towards the start of the season with losing Ben Palmer, and then we went through I think 4 or 5 different fly halves, of which all the lads who stepped in did a fantastic job, by the way. To step into a position that's not natural for them and to try and lead the team shows the type of player that we've got within the group. So I think consistency of selection, being fortunate enough not to lose key players at key moments within the season itself, and like I said, probably changing our style of play sooner to meet the conditions that we're then faced with in November, December and January. If you look at the second half of the season, I think we've scored almost 2.5 times the amount of tries versus the first half of the season. We've changed the way we're playing. The lads have changed the style. We're putting some fantastic bits of rugby together. And the try count speaks volumes for that in the second half of the season.
Is promotion to the Championship a realistic goal for Moseley? And if so, what's the likely timescale for achieving this?
Next year. No, it is. Every club wants to get to the Championship. This is a Championship club. It's a former top flight club. It's steeped in history. Many fantastic players gone beforehand and pulled on the Moseley shirt. And to get success, it takes time. It doesn't just happen overnight, and you can't just buy a team. And as I've already previously said, look at the top 6 sides. They've had continuity and consistency of squad. They've got a good conveyor belt of players coming through to make it a sustainable model at the club. We probably don't have the the luxury of 5 years because the potential changes to the championship in 2024, 2025. So in order to beat the curb, we need to make sure that we accelerate our development as a group by retention, but also add in vital parts of recruitment to really galvanise the squad and drive the standards that we've got within the group. I firmly believe if we had continuity of selection in the first half of the season, the games that we'd lost, I'm not saying we would have won them, but there are at least 2 or 3 games that we probably could have won, and maybe the games that we didn't quite turn up for, that might have been a different story as well. But like I said, ultimately this club needs to get back to the championship, and we'll do everything we can to do it.
First of all, the refereeing about what you might call traditional laws and referees' interpretation of the traditional laws, and secondly about the overall standard. And is there more that we need to do to improve the standard of refereeing from National 1 downwards?
I often have a conversation with the referees post-game and pre-game, and I always want to know from them what the ARs actually do. So what's their involvement, and depending on which referee is refereeing will determine how they like to get the assistant referees involved. So for me, what I'd love to see as a director of rugby is some consistent points that the ARs are looking for, regardless. So they get, say, a clear brief, 5 or 6 points, this is what we look for regardless, and we will feed this into the referee. Some referees don't want any feedback from the ARs at all. So they're literally just them. So clearly they're going to miss things. Going back to your point on Saturday, if I'm honest, it was a poor game. I thought both sides didn't conduct themselves particularly well. The fact that we never trained that week due to COVID, it's not an excuse, but it would have impacted the lads in some capacity. I think what it highlighted to us as a group, especially the younger players as well, especially, it's how you package yourself up on the day of a game. So, regardless of whether you train during the week, how you prepare for the game, both mentally and physically, how you turn up, what you put into your bag, how you then prepare an hour before kick-off, sometimes that's equally as important as everything else you've done in the week. And I don't think we got that right. And we had a checkpoint Tuesday. We were honest. I spoke for 10, 15 minutes and highlighted a few areas which we want to see changed, or should I say, want to see developed within the group. And the great thing with this group, they certainly buy into it, and they're quite reactive, and they do what we want them to do, and they're a pleasure to work alongside. So I don't think the referee's job on Saturday was particularly easy. I do think he got a few things wrong, but that's officiating. I would not want to be in the middle trying to make those decisions. Your point on the high tackle, I think the reason why there wasn't a yellow card was the fact we went quickly. So we did a quick tap penalty, and I think he just got carried away, played advantage. It came to nothing. It never went back to the original offence. So, yeah, there's things that we could pick up, after the game. But I'll be quite honest with you. I think the accountability sits with us. We were poor.
As a North Mids ref, I'd have been given shit from that by an evaluator, and it just doesn't seem right. The level I refereed at was a lot lower than that one. So
I agree. I think all you ever want with a referee is consistency with decision making. So if it's the right decision, great. If it's the wrong decision, but it needs to be consistent throughout the whole of the game. And that's what you want, because then when you get that, it's parity for both sides. And I think sometimes you don't quite get that. And at National 1 level, how can I put it? The referees can sometimes tend to favour. They tend to favour the team in ascendant with their momentum. So the team that's in ascendancy, and the big work on for us at the start of the year was our discipline. So we'd go into games, we'd give penalties that weren't penalties, especially for offside. So we had to work really hard at being an extra half a metre back from the breakdown because we have really good line speed. And our penalty count now is under 10 for most games. So I think teams can help themselves. But I do think maybe at the start of a season or at the end of the season or during pre-season, maybe a sit down with the referees and understanding what they see would be a good feedback for all the clubs. And then, at least we've been then given that blueprint that we can then go away, we can work with that. And I think one of the things that probably could help is having the referees, I know they have to have downtime, but to come around the clubs, drop into a session, maybe come and referee a contact drill or whatever that looks like, so we can then start to understand how the referees are perceiving things, because their perception is different. One referee will see something completely different to another. So, Lutty.
One from Derek.
Just look at the team, Adam, and having watched several first home games, one of the things that sort of strikes me is that they seem quite quiet, and there's almost a lack of leadership. I mean, I know there'll be leaders on the part, but you know, when in my day, and you can't compare it, but when you've got Bealey and Warrow and Whitey, they never bloody shut up.
Still haven't.
And I suppose I was in that category, and probably you were as a player as well. But I don't see that from our lads at the moment. The sort of the leadership there, the guys sort of talking and just you know, helping each other, encouraging each other and things. So, is that a fact? I mean, they seem a really good bunch of guys, I think, but that just worries me a little bit. I don't see that.
I think communication is it's a skill. Not everybody can do it, and it's something that's we talk about every week with the group. And I think when the game's going well, lads are vibrant, they're vocal. When you're under pressure, you revert back to type. So it's easier to then maybe not talk as much, go back within yourself, focus on your own role. But really, you need to go the other way. You need to become more vocal. You need to galvanise, energise, talk to the people around you, and if you look at our forwards especially, they're young. The average age 21, 22, and to be playing in National 1, compared to other teams, they're a young bunch. And I think communication comes off the back of confidence, and it comes off the back of momentum, and it comes off the back of off the back of winning. And I think we've been very up and down with performances. And the games where we have won and we've performed really well, if you would listen to the videos, the noise would be great. But it's like with anything, isn't it? You go and address defence. Right, we're too quiet in defence, so right, we're going to work really hard, so we're really vocal. But then you stop talking in attack, or you stop talking in another facet of play. And that's the thing with the coaching. It's a constant. There's that many moving parts. But you're absolutely right, Derek. Communication is crucial, and to operate at this level, we've got to be better communicators. I do think the boys do it, but I think they need to be better at doing it and more consistent. Holly.
Can I just say on that point that it had communication as a point of improvement has been regularly mentioned during our team meetings and pre-training. So it is something that's been highlighted, and the coaches, the director of rugby, mention it, bring it to the front at training, and the boys do it at training, and then sometimes, as Adam says, it gets left behind on the pitch because of other pressures, because their mind's on other things. So yeah, I just wanted to say that it is regularly highlighted.
I think also, Derek, as you mentioned as well, I think sometimes it's personnel. So I think we've missed players like Will Safe. Will Safe is a natural talker. We've missed Jacques Leroux. So Jacques, back this weekend, which is great to see. But he's a good communicator. There's other lads that we've probably missed, like Aled Ward went back to Hartbury, real good communicator. Dorsey dropped in for one game. Everybody saw how energised and vocal Morgan was for one game. He didn't shut up for 80 minutes. Don't know how he did it. But the point is, you're absolutely right. And to me, it came natural, like it did to you. And it is a frustration, a coaching frustration. But it's something you just got to keep hitting the repeat button, because eventually they will improve their communication. You're not sure when, but it will happen. And when it does, we'll then move on to the next thing.
Is that something when you're recruiting, you look for players with that sort of style?
They've got to talk for 5 minutes now, yeah.
I'll throw in another question that was emailed while we're thinking about others. This was, whilst I understand, or at least I think I do, the vagaries of the loan and dual register schemes, why do we get in a position where none are available? Seb slotted in really well but seemed to have disappeared. Ricketti and Greg had great games with Plymouth but neither featured against Stortford. And both the Jersey guys have played half a game each and then seem to be not available.
So Ricky and Greg, from the EAP point of view, so England Academy players, it's all about development for them. So it's all about playing. So they played for us against Plymouth. Great games. They then got pulled out due to the Premiership Cup that was played on Tuesday night. So they had to play in the Prem Cup. Didn't have to play. They were selected, which was fantastic for them. They both got 20 plus minutes, which is great exposure for them as young players coming through. And they're back in the mix this weekend. So Wasps had to pull them out the week of Bishop Stortford purely for the fact that A, they didn't want to risk injury, and secondly, they didn't want to overload them with unnecessary minutes because they wanted them to be fresh so they could perform then against Saracens at home on the Tuesday. The two Jersey lads, Max unfortunately tweaked his hamstring against Roslyn Park. That happens. And Jack Higgins, unfortunately has been unwell. Jack is, he's back to full strength, and I'm sure both lads, without me saying what the team is, will be there or thereabouts this weekend.
Thanks. Any other questions from the floor?
On Saturday, we gave away a lot of possession in very promising positions by losing lineouts. And Stortford, when they had lineouts in similar positions, they nailed every single one. What are they doing that we aren't?
Well, they're more accurate to begin with, and I think the frustrating thing for us, Stortford had 2 weeks to prepare for the game. So if I'd have been Bishop Stortford, I would have analysed our line-out. So they've had 4 sessions to prepare for our game that they played on Saturday, and ultimately it wasn't good enough. I can't dress it up any other way. Our set piece wasn't good enough. Our line-up wasn't good enough. Comes down to the whole unit as a collective. Whether it's the throw, whether it's the lift, whether it's the call, whether it's the movement, whether it's the understanding of where we are on the pitch, it just wasn't good enough, and it isn't good enough, and it's not acceptable. I certainly won't make any excuses for it. The lads have worked really hard this week, and let's judge them on Saturday, and I'm sure they will put in a stellar performance at Rams away, and hopefully on Sunday, we'll all be reflective and think actually we can see a real progression in the lineup from where it was the week before.
Gillian, another question?
So can I do a follow-up on that? And this is not so much about Mose. I mean, I've observed this tearing my hair out, although I have more hair than some people, down at Chinner. I mean, you see sides coming under pressure, and they don't change their line-out format. So we never see the 4-man option any longer. 3 men going up, 1 on the ground, low and high. All those kind of things we used to do when you came under pressure. Why is that? Is that something that's happened in the game? Or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the danger is you overcomplicate rugby, don't you? I think that's the point. And we went down to Tunbridge, and for 50 minutes, I think we won every line-up ball right at the front of the line-up. Now that's clarity of game plan, clarity of understanding the opposition, and sticking to something there if it's working. I think sometimes the danger is you have all these different options, and you're just picking them randomly, and we never go into a game like that. We have a line-out sheet, so the lads know what line-outs to select and which ones to leave. And as we know, when you come under pressure, people's thought processes can change. When you're tired and you're fatigued, the accuracy of lift and throw can sometimes be questionable. I don't think we've helped ourselves with the spacing in the line-out in terms of how we command our space, which is something that which we're trying to address. And just on your point, you're absolutely right. Most teams in this league use a 5-man or a 6-man. I don't know anybody who uses a 7. And the 7-man line-out is still one of the best line-outs out there. You've got all the forwards in the line. Backs have got more space.
Sorry I'm late, I've been training.
That's okay.
The team for Saturday, don't you?
I don't know how to start. I'll start with Worcester. cried off their game on Friday night
Yep.
because I believe they had 4 COVID cases, all front row, and 32 injuries.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
How do we compare with them? Because I think you're on about your 50th player now for the first
Dave,
team.
let's be precise. It's 47, mate.
Oh, really?
So it's 47. No, so it's funny you should say that. I've been prepared for this question. So look, out the 47 players, 6 players are no longer with us. They had to step away for personal reasons. 1 player had to retire due to advice medically. 1 player stepped away to help his father in the family-run business, and 4 players, off the back of COVID, decided that semi-professional rugby was not for them anymore in terms of this level. And I totally understand that, because COVID has changed the landscape for many things. 6 players were dual reg, so they came in from Worcester, they came in from Hartbury, London Scottish, so Morgan Dawes, Alid, Seb, Joe Morris, Kai Owen. So these lads came in for a couple of games, more to provide respite for our players who were creaking quite early on due to, again, coming off the back of COVID, not having played enough rugby for 18 months. And then other players who came in due to being EAPs. So I think I counted 15 players in total that you could easily take out the 47, which then takes us down to 32. Out of that 32, we've got 6 long-term injuries. They won't play again this year. So that takes us down to 26. And that's the 26 with the additional players that have come in. So, the Max Eilings, Jack Higgins, Luke Hibbard, these lads had to come in before that cut-off date. Otherwise, as a squad, we'd be down to like 22, 23. And me and Glax would be having to get our boots on with Ashley, which would be a disaster. And then if you look at Plymouth, at the moment, Plymouth are playing every week with 18 players. They came to us, they had 18 players involved. They played last week, 18 players. They don't have any more players available. The EAPs that they had with Exeter, I believe, got called back due to having to play in the Premiership Cup. So that's put them under pressure. And it's been a difficult season. I'm hoping that we never have to work through this type of season again, because obviously, hopefully we'll see the back of COVID and we can carry on as normal next year. But I think the landscape this year has been very difficult in terms of keeping lads fit and keeping them on the field.
So thinking forward, Adam, given the squad size we have and the position we're in, actually has been a remarkable achievement, I think. Looking forward, given the budget restraints that you've done a fantastic job with this season, what sort of squad configuration do you see us having next season, and what sort of squad size do you see us having next season?
I think when a squad is durable, so when I say durable, so you got lads who are match hardened, so they've come off the back of a good season, maybe playing 15, 20, 22 games, had a real good pre-season. You'd like to think you could operate with a squad of about 32 players, but that's not then taking into account players who you might have as EAPs. So if you said like 3 EAPs, probably 35. The difficulty that we have is we don't run a second team. So we have Moseley Oak, which is fantastic, and we've seen 7 young fringe first team players who are 18, 19, 20, all go and play for Moseley Oak and have fantastic seasons. And they've all gone and played like 20 plus games, which is great for them in their development. Moseley Oak are on the cusp of getting promoted, which is great for the club. But in terms of the first team, because we don't run that second team, you have to carry a bigger squad. And then the issue that you've got is then how do you keep players engaged? Because they might not they may not play for 6 weeks. So then you run the risk of them becoming professional trainers, and then they're not match sharp, and then they make mistakes in the game. So it's almost like it's a vicious circle. So probably like going back to it, 32 to 35 players would be about right. If we could run a second team, that would help. Or if we could at least maybe get 10 additional fixtures throughout the season, which would give these lads game exposure, especially boys coming back from injury, for example, or boys who haven't played for a long time. That would be a real positive moving forward, and that's something that we're already looking at for next year.
Adam, I think, bearing in mind the size of the squad, I think you did an amazing job in keeping players happy. But how feasible is a second team?
Really feasible, because a second team's very feasible, because if you think about it, you know, well, if you think about the figure, 47 players, there's your two teams, you know, and then you underpin it with young players. So maybe you know, you could give a couple of debuts to some Colts, or lads who are, say, caught between Colts and, say, Moseley Oak. You know, they can dip into that second team game because they're playing with good older players who can look after them. You know, there's a real scope for it. But I think the question is, can we make it happen? And I think for this year, especially, the priority was getting back playing, work off the back of COVID. Let's see the back of that, and let's try and finish the season strong, which is what we have done in the second half of the season. Yes, we've got 4 notable games that we've got to get through, and you know, we're looking forward to them. But I think next year, in order to keep players match fit, we need to have an option to, even if it's like say, highlight 10 games to get these players involved in.
Chinna had a problem with regard to players' agents. Is there really enough money at this level to justify agents? Do many of our players have agents? Presumably an agent gets paid when a player moves clubs. So how difficult it is to build a settled squad if agents are always trying to encourage players to move and make money?
I'll bash him over the head. I might let Dave answer this one because he doesn't like agents.
He loves this.
No, a lot of the players at this level, to my knowledge, don't really have agents. For me, if you're not a full-time pro, what do you need an agent for? You know, it goes back to communication. You should be able to pick up the phone, come and have a chat, and you know, argue your case, and that says a lot about you as an individual. I understand if a player aspires to get to a Premiership club or something, then fine, have an agent. But if you're a seasoned semi-pro National 1 player, you don't need an agent. What you need to do is have a bit of confidence in yourself and just come and knock on the door and pick up the phone or drop somebody an email. You know, I've had some really good conversations with players. The bulk of our squad are not represented by an agent. Some of them are. I don't think they need to be, but you know, there'll always be an agent out there because some players feel it's a necessity. It's a bit like a handbag. You know, I've got an agent. Okay, great. Well, what's he going to do for you?
So how much does our...
Sure.
Sorry, Karen, go on.
And this is maybe one you need to cut out, so I don't know. So my understanding, from someone who might know, is that this is all about players who actually didn't necessarily have an agent. They knew someone who recommended them.
Yep.
And Chinner, foolishly, put him down on the books as having an agent.
So you get
have you heard that?
Yeah, you get introducers. So I constantly get people WhatsApp me. I don't know how they get hold of my number, but they do. Email me and all that sort of stuff, and they say I've got this player, I've got that player, and you know, they're not an agent. There's only one agent. I use one agent. He's a great guy. He's a former Premiership player. I trust him.
So apparently, Chinner put down introducers as agents, and the RFU said, but they're not agents.
But they're not agents.
They're
not a registered agent. You know, there is a list. There is a list on the RFU website.
This is an error of people trying to be too honest. So is the RFU OTT on this?
No, not really. The reason why the RFU have done it is to take the cowboy element out of agency, and also look at and talk about player welfare. So look after players in terms of making sure they're not getting ripped off, and making sure their best interests are, you know, at the forefront of whatever's going on. You know, we like I said, I'll go back to my point. I don't think semi-pro level you need an agent. What you need is a good support network around you to give you advice. Dads, mums, you know, other members of the family or friends who can help.
How do you deal with the Cowboys in the Championship then?
I can't say.
Quickly moving on. How much does our final league position influence player decisions to play with us or move on next season?
Sorry, say again.
How much does our final league position influence a player's decision to play for us or move on for the next season?
I don't know. I mean, that's up to the player individually. I mean, the lads love the environment. They love the coaching. They love the standard. They love everything about the club. They love the club. It's very difficult because if you look at results, sometimes you can get lost in the detail. This is a journey. We're brand new as a group, and as I keep saying to the lads, you know, what are you waiting for? This is your vehicle. You know, take it by the scruff of the neck, drive it in the direction that you want. You know, what are you waiting for? And I go back to it. The second half of the season's been notably better. I still think there's so much to come from this group, and a lot of it comes from confidence, growing into your position, getting back playing. You know, some of these lads, like I say, haven't played a lot of rugby in the last three and a half years. So I think they're grateful to be here. They want to be here. I certainly wouldn't just have anybody here just for the sake of it or just to add to the numbers. As far as I'm aware, all the boys want to stay, and that's ongoing conversations that I'm having directly with them.
This one may not apply for this season. Do we know why players tend to move on, or do we know how clubs nearer the top of the league manage to retain their players for multiple seasons? Is it all down to money?
It's not all down to money. Money is a factor. A lot of it is geographical location. A lot of it is the wider demographics. So Birmingham, for example, is a football playing city. It hasn't got loads and loads of rugby clubs compared to, say, a Cinderford, which is in Gloucestershire. It's got Hartby just up the road. There's that many rugby clubs in that area. You know, lads can travel 15 miles away, and you can have lads queuing up out the door to come and play for Cinderford, for example. Same as Bishop Stortford, same as Cambridge. If you live in that location, there's not a lot else there, so you're going to go and play for that club. Birmingham here, it's a challenge. You know, 70% of our squad travelling from 60 miles away. You know, we're trying to get guys jobs. We've got probably 4 or 5 players jobs, so we're giving them a reason to come to the club, to come to the city. It should be an easy sell. This is the second largest city in the country. You know, I was chatting to some of our coaches on Tuesday, and 2 of them run their own businesses. I'm thinking, well, it'd be great if I could speak to all of the parents and see who runs their own businesses, and would they be in a position to offer an opportunity to some of our players? Because the more lads we can get working in Birmingham, the better for the club, because it means they'll stay. It means they'll relocate, and you know, often players move either for money or to relocate for work or for personal reasons.
Do we talk through the commercial team to our sponsors about opportunities like that?
Yeah, we do. I mean, the commercial team have been great. They've lined up BT and Embark, and you know, we've used our directors. You know, Dave Warren's been great in terms of finding some of the boys labouring work, but also work as accountants. And you know, it's an ongoing. It's such a big beast with so many moving parts, and it sounds easy. Do you know what? We'll get 30 players in, we'll get them all jobs, we'll relocate them. And it's not until you do one you think, God, that's an awful lot of work, you know, and that's the challenge we face. But again, if you think bigger picture, you know, if you're starting to do 4, 5, 6 players a year, over 5 years, that's 30 players. Then you've got the young players coming through, as we've already touched on. All of a sudden, in 5 or 6 years' time, this club could be in a very, very strong position. But it takes time. You've got to keep looking at the long game. Short, mid-term and long-term game, and that's the challenge, and that's the kind of strategy that, you know, I'm always looking at, you know, with the management and with the directors.
Is there any other questions from the floor? Should we go back, see if anybody's got any other thing they'd like to ask? Silence. I've got a couple more that we can go through, and maybe somebody will think of something else. These are all related to game plans. With regard to the Plymouth game, you talked about implementing the game plan, sticking to the script. Can you give us an example of what a game plan is without giving away any secrets?
A game plan is when you do analysis of the opposition. So you look at the opposition, you look at certain, they may have certain traits in terms of how they try and play, how they defend, weaknesses, strengths, and then you look at yourself in terms of available players for selection, you know, and then you formulate a way that you'd like to play from set piece, from broken field, from your own 40 to the middle part of the pitch to the attacking 40. Your kicking strategy, you know, you look at a whole host of things, and then you bolt into that your starter plays, your line outs, your scrums, kicking options. Do you go in with a quick tap penalty option in the middle third? You know, there's lots of variations, and depending on who you're playing against, will determine on the game plan that you try and implement. And sometimes, as spectators, you probably look and think, can't see what game plan they're trying to implement, but you know, and that's the frustration of coaching. That's the frustration of sometimes as a team you're not turning up. But this weekend we've got a very, very clear game plan, and hopefully the lads will go out and implement it, and hopefully you'll be able to see exactly what they're trying to do against Rams.
So how flexible is it during the game then, if the plan is not working, to change?
It's very flexible, you know. We're always constantly reviewing it. I'm always looking at certain aspects. Ashley will look at certain aspects, so will Pete, and you know Harley's there, and you know players that are substitutes. They're constantly looking at certain aspects, and you know we're always feeding in information back into the team. But sometimes you have to allow the game to unfold. You have to allow the game to develop. You have to allow mistakes to happen. It's easy just to probably say that's not working, let's change it. Well, sometimes if you just let it go a little bit further, you then get the mileage that you're looking for. You get the success that you're looking for. A bit like Tunbridge away for 60 minutes. It was an arm wrestle. On the 65th minute, they blew a gasket. We ran in 3 tries. Plymouth at home, the first 10 minutes did not go how we scripted, but then for the next 60 minutes, we were on script and scored 7 great tries. So, you know, that's the whole thing with the game plan. You know, you have to remember you're playing against an opposition, you're playing against a team that wants to win, you're playing against 15 lads that, you know, effectively want to beat you up, you know, and game plans are great, but you've got to have the ability and the will to go and implement it. And, you know, other things that factor that are, you know, conditions. But like I said, we've got a clear one for this weekend. We'll see if the boys can do it.
And do players get criticised if they deviate from the game plan? Is it something that, you know?
Yeah, look, if we go in with a clear structure and we say, look, these are our line-out calls, and we don't call them, we call something else, I can assure you the lads get politely told. Same with the kicking plan, same with if we go in with a couple of starter plays and we don't do them, you know, at the end of the day, this is a coach-led, player-driven environment. You know, coaches lead, they give the detail, the players then drive the standards. They're the best environments, that's our environment. You know, and the lads, you know, are great, you know, they translate that detail, but they don't always get it right. And as I've said before, you know, pressure can do strange things to people, and it can affect people's thought processes, which is why, you know, we're here for that checkpoint.
I suppose one for me. Oh, Dave's got one, please.
God, there's a good one. My little pet hate. How influential are the refs to the result of the game?
I think they're big, Dave. I think the big thing for me, it's knowing the referee. I think every team's pet hate in National One is inconsistency. So if a ref is inconsistent, they get a decision wrong or perceived decision wrong, but they get it wrong every time, you can accept it. You know, you think, well, actually, Joe, it's fair for both sides. It's when it's inconsistent, and that's where I feel assistant referees can help the ref a little bit more. You know, and again, I think referees probably tend to side with the team with momentum. So if a team has got set piece dominance at scrum, line out drive, that's an easy win for them. If a team is you know, running through players left, right, and centre, again, it's an easy one to jump on the back of. So I would not want to be a referee in the middle. I think for me, having that open dialogue with referees at the start of the season, before the season starts or when the season finishes, I think would better the game for all the National League clubs, because then we'd start to build that rapport with all the referees, and referees probably wouldn't feel like a stranger when they come in. And you know, they've already been familiar with the players because they might have come up and done a couple of guest sessions, you know. And I know referees have got jobs away from refereeing, but if we could see that coordinated approach by clubs and referees together before the season starts, I think that would help with the level of officiating.
I'll ask one if you don't mind, Adam.
Go on then, Glenn.
You said earlier that, you know, you're not going to count us being safe, because I suppose mathematically we aren't at the moment, but we are in about the best position we've been in for a number of seasons at the moment. A week or so ago on the video you recorded, you said, you know, you're having good conversations with people about retention of squad. Are you getting more confident we can put sort of signatures on pieces of paper before we get to the end of the season?
I've been talking to players for the last 4 weeks. You know, I just haven't really made it public. As I said, the group want to stay. They're a great group. I think, answering your point about safe, I mean, the danger is when you sometimes you don't have anything to play for apart from winning. Sometimes that's not enough. You know, and as a group, we've sat down and we said, look, you know, there's an opportunity to finish 7th. I still think that is an opportunity, although we've got, you know, 4 tough games, as you'd probably as you probably would highlight. But however, 2 of those games are at home. You know, we need to react from last week, this week down at Rams. So, you know, I think all we can do is take one game at a time, let others do whatever they're going to do. And, you know, if we can finish 8th or 7th, then that would be a great position. Because as I've already said, the top 6 have almost moved into their own league due to, as I've touched on, the continuity and consistency of squad that they've had together for the last 5 or 6 years. So, you know, we can only focus on what we're doing, and the lads are desperate to get to Easter, which is that week off in 2 weeks' time, and record points in both games, both this one and back at home next week against Sale.
Let's hope so. Yep. So one last chance. Anybody got any last questions for Adam? No? Okay. If I can just thank Steve on the mic and Martin for doing the videoing
Martin.
tonight.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
And for everybody coming down and asking the questions, most of all to Adam for sitting here and taking your questions. Thanks, Adam.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.